sit on the sell side of media, technology or media? Okay, good. And then how many of you sit on the marketer or buy-side agency side? Oh, wow, we're actually pretty equally split. Okay, well, unfortunately, in some regards, I'm going to talk to the sell side of the business today. In fact, I've actually, because I thought that was sort of the focus of some of the membership of Joe's organization and some of how you looked at the business. I've been fortunate enough, I've actually worked on both sides of the business. In fact, I'm very happy to report that I was a very avid buyer of outdoor media. In fact, one of the greatest career moments I had, although maybe it's a small win in some regards, is I actually recommended to one of the Procter & Gamble brands to do outdoor. This is 25 years ago. And what was interesting about that is that the only time I've ever had any client from my agency days, let alone Procter & Gamble, they actually said to me, wow, that's interesting, that outdoor program, Greg. Could you actually double the budget against it? So it was a very high watermark because you usually didn't get those kind of things, let alone for an alternative media. So I applauded that Procter and their sort of thinking around that. I've actually changed the title of the talk I want to share with you today. What I want to talk a little bit about, those of you who sell local media, and what I think might be one of the biggest opportunities you may see in our generation, I'd say. Because I think that's really what mobile is happening. In some regards, internet to me was a tasting menu to what mobile presents and has an opportunity for us to do today. So some background, the MMA, just for those of you who don't know us, because we are the newest of the media marketing trade associations, we have 550 members in 49 countries around the world. We actually are probably the only, dare I say, truly global media marketing trade group, and we sit on both the buy side and the sell side of the organization. And I'm actually in the process of getting ready to announce a brand new chair of my organization, which specifically comes from the marketer side. It's actually a real industry illuminee. So I hope to look forward to making that announcement to you shortly. But obviously, the comments that I'm going to share with you today are in the context of a rapidly changing media marketplace, right? This is true for if you sit in the same place I do with having teenagers in the house. I mean, I know for a fact that my 14-year-old twin daughters have never, ever looked at a newspaper. Wouldn't have any concept of it. Wouldn't even know why it would matter to them in any way whatsoever. Now, I don't know that that doesn't change over time. Hopefully it does, because there's still a lot of value in all the media. But interesting, some of the seismic shifts. Now, Joe was kind enough, too, to kind of put some of my comments in context. I'm going to tell you where I'm going here in a minute. I just want to kind of set some ground, some baseline for you. Joe was actually kind of to send me sort of outdoor spending trends, billions of dollars, U.S. only. Gives you a sense, good to know that is moving upwards. And, for all good sake, if Joe and the rest of the industry, you all do your job, those trends should continue. I wanted to compare that, though, to what I think, back to my original comment, that this is a generational opportunity like we will not see in our careers, and that is mobile. Now, there's been a lot of people who have said, it's the year of mobile. It's become kind of a joke within my industry. It's the way that we make fun of ourselves and others make fun of us, dare I say. And yet there is something seismic that I believe is happening, and I say that from the context of both being a student, a philosopher, an interested learner about the world of advertising and marketing now for the 30 years of my career. I do believe that we have not seen anything like this before, and maybe will since. We'll see. Now, unfortunately, obviously, that's causing a lot of changes, right? We need to rethink how we do things. We're having to pick up new skills, and I have no way to nullify that. I have no way to make that easy for you. It is part of what's going to happen. We are going to need to learn new skills, maybe not just this one exactly, but some example of some of the things that we're facing. And it's all a part of what I would view as a rapidly changing world. Roll this. Advertising has a great way of picking up what's happening. If we could roll the tape.
Texts last month.
NWRUS?
That wasn't a compliment. Sean, 1,000 texts?
UGH.
And you're old enough to know better.
MYOB, will you?
Grandma.
Mom, who could you be texting?
IDK, my BFF Rose.
Now get a texting plan the whole family can NJOY.
So you get the idea, right? There's a changing world. I don't know how many of you know this, but the average teenager today not sends and receives, but sends 3,300 text messages a month. Anybody shocked to hear that? A couple, the older ones in the back, I think. If you have, how many of you have teenagers in the house and surprised to hear that there's 3,000 text messages a month? Yeah. How many think that's low? Yeah, there we go. I knew I'd get to the right question to capture that one. So here's what I want to talk a little bit about today. I want to talk about a local marketer's viewpoint of mobile, just how they're seeing it, because part of what we faced, and those of you who know me know I did digital media for a lot of years, particularly internet, sort of obviously. I want to talk, there was a lot of resistance that marketers, in particular sort of small marketers had, local marketers had, as it related to the internet. I think that's all gone. I want to share some insights. I then want to talk to you a little bit about how the MMA is looking at mobile, and then I really want to get to the opportunity that presents itself for you. Okay? So let's look at the state of mobile as it pertains to small marketers, generally retailers are a good example of that. Recent data from them suggests that they believe that smartphones are significant in driving traffic. Now, that might be kind of an obvious point, but it appears that there's an inflection point that's happened where those numbers have really begun to shift, where that they believe at an even more significant level that mobile drives a lot of value to driving traffic. Should be obvious, right? Every retailer, that's all they focus on. It's all they really care about. When you also ask small, medium-sized marketers, businesses, with a presence in different digital channels, how do they look at what they're trying to accomplish? Mobile here is identified in the chart. What do they have and what do they expect to have? Very high marks on what they expect to get to very soon, right? So we've seen this shift. I've seen other data by the Kelsey and other people that suggest the same kind of thing. In some regards, it's led me to suggest that I think in a lot of regards, mobile is the missing piece to local. You look at what's happening in your marketplace, Yellow Pages, $15 billion category, going like this. Newspapers off 50% from $50 billion originally. Radio, $20 billion industry, largely local, massive amounts of transition, change going on there, in particular around connected cars. TV, similar sort of dynamics, although sort of I think is held somewhat strong. Mobile, I believe, is the opportunity to step in and capture a big chunk of those dollars for reasons that I just expressed and that marketers are interested in, right? And in fact, from my friends, I think this is Kelsey, I have to check the source on this, pretty sure it's Kelsey. From the Kelsey folks, they're actually suggesting that in the next 3 years, that local mobile overtakes national mobile in terms of its total spend. Again, a big opportunity. You have the marketers moving that direction. You have their openness to it. Now, a couple of years ago, I was asked to speak to a group of local publishers, and I thought, wow, this would be an easy presentation to do. I happened to be showing up at a publisher conference the weekend before I was to give this speech. I thought, I'm just going to ask 10 of my publisher friends about what they're doing in order to build their mobile skill set, their mobile channels across the board. And I thought, this is simple. I'll collect a bunch of insight. I'll walk in, and I'll give a I'll write the presentation on the plane. I'll walk in and give it. This should be easy. The title of my presentation, because this was the underlying strategy for every one of those publishers, was we hired a guy. That was as far as they had gotten, and that was 2 years ago. Now, what's interesting about that is at the time that mobile usage by consumers was around 10-15% of the total traffic. I have not met a publisher today that doesn't suggest that their mobile traffic is 30%, and I'm starting to see more and more start to quote 50% as a big change. So while we're figuring out our strategy, right, we publishers, media companies are figuring out our strategy, the world's moving pretty rapidly. Consumers are really creating a whole bunch of change. Okay. So let me talk a little bit about that consumer perspective, and a little bit how the MMA sort of positions mobile and talks about that, right? First off, we all kind of know the growth charts, right? The adoption of devices, the adoption of tablets, again, have been absolutely on fire, right? But even more interesting is that the proliferation of apps and the usage of apps, and I know the data that says that apps get ignored, that we don't pay as much attention to them, but there are significant amounts of people using a significant amount of time connected to an app, which has turned it much more into a media device. And you're seeing those trends also, as this data shows, relative to minutes spent in apps versus TV and I think, is that right? Yeah, I see that some of my, I apologize there. The TV is actually on the right in the yellow. My apologies for that. And that middle one, darker orange, is actually for apps. Okay? We also see, too, a similar thing and sort of present a time spent. Again, similar data, similar to what you all sort of know and I think have come to understand, is that consumers are creating the significant shift in change to mobile. This, to me, is part of what really pushes phones and tablets into being actual media devices. Now, some of that's sort of interesting enough, right? The usage is enough that marketers will start to pay attention, and I don't have a marketer today who resists mobile in any real regards. But what we haven't really started to understand is, or maybe reflected on, maybe some of this you've heard, I apologize I missed yesterday, but you look at the stats, 82% of people said they would never leave home without their phone, right? The average person today checks their phone 150 times a day. In fact, many of you are doing that right now, right? That's the nature of what these devices mean to us. That's the importance that they have. All those underutilized moments are when I need to get a task accomplished, right? And I know where it is, right? Every single second of the day, I know exactly where it is. Okay. Because what's happened now is become an absolute necessity. What was sort of a luxury at one point, and it's funny that I run that commercial earlier of the grandmother texting because it was so funny. I literally did get a text from my 80-year-old mother the other day who just said, I'm just telling you I now have a smartphone and I am texting,